Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Top Hat Shaming Man here, and today, at some point, I'm going to address whether Shigeru Miyamoto is horrible. And no, I'm not simply plagiarising Guru Larry's content on 5 times Shigeru Miyamoto was an arsehole. So if you love hearing about Shigeru Miyamoto in a negative light, then I suggest you watch that video as well. But to be fair, this is all part of a greater context. I shall be talking about Shigeru Miyamoto just based off one of the fantastic questions I have been asked by one of my patrons. Because, as one of my reward incentives for simply donating as little as $1 a month, you get to have your questions answered each and every month in video form. And these fantastic people keep helping me in propelling this channel forward. So far together, we've got over 15,000 subscribers in less than 2 years. And that's almost unheard of in today's YouTube, to get 15,000 subscribers in the modern day without having extra platforms to leap off, like, you know, like those bloody Disney Channel stars who've jumped over to YouTube, that sort of thing. I'm obviously not going to be at their level, no, not in terms of subscribers anyway. But we're getting there nonetheless, even with my somewhat occasional controversial thoughts and opinions. But anyway, let's get on to address the questions from my fantastic, beautiful, amazing, fantastical patrons. Did I use the word fantastic and fantastical twice? Not quite sure. I guess you can decide. Okay, questions. I've actually gone to the effort of printing them off today, so yes, that's nice. It's even got a picture of myself on it in front of a tombstone in Transylvania. Okay, so first question from Andrew Byzantsky. What is the most comfortable hat you own? Also, what is your favourite platform to import games for? Very good questions, Andrew. Most comfortable hat? I'm going to have to say the top hat. It's bloody very comfortable. There's nothing wrong with it. It's light, it's airy, and most importantly, it doesn't even cut my ears. Like, look, I can even put pressure on it and my ears don't get cut. Like, that's a fantastic hat. Like, sometimes if you're low brow, you'll wear a baseball cap, and even baseball caps can cause a bit of irritation around the ears, can't they? But this top hat, beautiful. I bloody love it. Yes. So, next question. Actually, I'll keep it on because I love it. Question from Helen Fairgrave. Actually, sorry, Andrew, that's very rude of me. I forgot to address the second half of your question. Also, what is your favourite platform to import games for? I'm going to have to say the Virtual Boy, just because it's just such an absurd little platform, isn't it? And it's such a small library, only 22 games. So, yes, I quite enjoy making purchases for the Virtual Boy since that never came out in Europe. And I'm doing pretty well. I think I've got about 14 out of the 22 releases, so I've got 2/3 of the game in existence. Don't know whether I'll ever go for a full set, because to be fair, the games I've still not got, they're the games worth stupid money, which are bad quality. And as I've mentioned on this channel before, I'm not paying out for games of bad quality. Like, literally only obsessive compulsive idiots pay large sums for crap games. There's literally no other reason to do it, is there, other than some bizarre obsession or something like that. So next question, Helen Fairgrave, yes, we've got to you now. Did you ever have any weird experiences at customs because of carrying around so many handhelds, cameras and computer equipment everywhere you have been? Ah, yes, I've had so many experiences going in and out of customs around the world. Some pleasant, some not so pleasant. I'll start off with a not so pleasant one, because I feel the not so pleasant one's probably not as interesting as the pleasant ones for a change. Like, you wouldn't think that something positive was more interesting. But yes, I found China particularly annoying to get through, and I was only passing through the country. So I got a flight from Australia to China, to London, to Greece, and which is a ridiculous route when you think about it, but it was the cheapest what was going at the time. But yes, when I was in China, even though I was only passing through for a few hours, I brought my hand luggage and they literally took every single item I owned out of it and looked over all of it, and they never even gave me a reason why they was doing it. It's like, it's ridiculous. Like, why? Like, China's not really under siege, is it, like many other countries around the world? So why have they got such tight security? But then again, maybe that's why they don't have many problems in China, because they're obviously on the ball in terms of checking stuff. But yes, it was a rather irritating experience in China, because as I said, they literally turned over everything I owned and they never even gave me a reason why they did it. And they was a bit rude and a bit abrupt, their customs. But then again, customs in a lot of places are, no matter where you go in the world, whether it's east, west, wherever. So let's go to some more positive and amusing experiences. Greece. Once I bought a job lot of NES games over on the island of Crete. And as I was taking, again, I put them all in my hand luggage, and as I was putting it through the machine, customs, they got it all out and had a look at it. The amusing thing was, the man at customs actually looked at him and he was just delighted. He was like, I knew it was them, I just had to check. So he's obviously a big fan of retro gaming, and he literally just wanted to look at the NES games I bought, because normally Greece is really lax in terms of security. They just don't care in certain parts of the world, and Greece is one of those countries like, go through, they don't care, they're not threatened. And again, when has Greece ever had a terrorist attack, to be fair? So they haven't really got much right to be concerned anyway. So yes, Greece was amusing. And my third customs story, if you'd call it customs, maybe baggage control, but more like. But when I flew back from the USA last year, I actually purchased a huge amount of games all over the country, because I knew that obviously that way I'm not going to have to pay any tax like I would when I import stuff via the post. So I literally filled up my hand luggage to the absolute brim, and no, I filled up my suitcase with games as well, thinking about it. So it was well overweight, like ridiculously overweight. So I just thought, you know what, like, I'm obviously not going to have to pay the huge import taxes, so I might as well pay for overweight luggage instead, because that would be much cheaper. I was actually flying home with British Airways, and then when I weighed it and it was well overweight, all he did was tell me off. It was like, please don't put that much in your luggage again. Next time we're going to have to charge you for overweight. I was like, okay, I won't do it again. But I had the full intention of paying overweight anyway. So that was amazing, buying all of those games in the United States and not having to pay any tax on importing them, and not even having to pay for overweight baggage. That was amazing. That's definitely my favourite customs experience, like getting all that stuff over to Britain and paying no American taxes. Absolutely amazing. Okay, next question. Oh, I'm screwing this up a bit. Interesting. From, which ones do I have? A question from Edward O'Reilly. Thanks for the suggestion regarding Fire Emblem from the last Q&A. I have made note of it myself and working my way through the new Metroid on the 3DS. We'll look at the Fire Emblem games afterwards. Yes, I advised him to play Fire Emblem if he was looking for a similar experience to Advance Wars. Personally, I think Fire Emblem is definitely the closest match to that. Okay, so here's my question. Are you a fan of retro TV shows like Stranger Things, Ashes to Ashes, Better Call Saul? To be fair, I've not heard of any of those, so I guess no, maybe. I think we are all fans of retro here. I'm nostalgic for music and games from these eras, probably because I grew up in them. I have good memories of the Goonies, A-Team, the original Star Wars. Yes, I bloody love the original Star Wars. I'm not much of a TV man, but I do like a movie because it's smaller and digestible, isn't it? Like, you can watch a film because you've only got to waste 90 minutes of your time, rather than all these American TV series you get these days, what go on for bloody ever. To be fair, there are a lot of retro TV shows I do like when I think about it, but ones what might not be known on a more global scale. Like, big fan of old British stuff like The Young Ones, Only Fools and Horses, Bottom, all sorts. I really do love the good old British sitcoms. There's many. The Fast Show, that was great as well. Harry Enfield and Chums. I could go on and on. Monty Python. Like, the list is endless of great comedy. So in terms of TV shows, yeah, I wouldn't say I like particularly dramatised stuff, but I do like old school comedy when it comes to 80s television and before, obviously, stuff like Monty Python's even older than that. So yes, that's what I'll say to that one. Next question from Audrey Sampson for all the Gal subscribers. Gal. Interesting term there. Very colloquial. I like it. For all the gal subscribers that love a proper British gentleman, are you single or taken? Smiley face. Yeah, that's a very interesting question you've got there. And as you've stated, I am a British gentleman indeed. And a British gentleman never kisses and tells. So, I'm not going to answer that one for you, unfortunately. However, I can see why I am a particularly dashing, ravishing young individual. Like, who doesn't like a wealthy, powerful man who can take control? Yeah. Well, obviously not most of my male viewers, I would gather. But anyway, we're inclusive on this channel. Most of the time. Next question from Edward O'Reilly. I like the fact that you're not afraid to point out the failings of the big game companies like Nintendo, Sony, etc. When I was small, it was my Mega Drive is better than your SNES. Re! He didn't re, I added the re in. And all this kinds of stuff went on in school, fanboys and that. Only now in adulthood can I see what's good and bad in all of the products and games. So what's your opinion on Mr. Shigeru Miyamoto? And then he's gone on to say, he is a genius and has made some excellent games, but I feel he is a full-on corporate person who only sings the praises of Nintendo, and I'd never criticise them. Any interviews I have read in gaming magazines over the years, he has never challenged on anything critical, and I have found he doesn't praise anyone else's work unless it's Nintendo related. All of the other developers can recognise someone's great work on the various platforms, but not him. Would you like to interview Mr. Shigeru Miyamoto? And what questions would you ask? Interesting. I can talk about this one for a bit, I would gather. To address the clickbaitness of the title, is Shigeru Miyamoto horrible? Obviously quite debatable. I've never met Shigeru Miyamoto. All I ever see, as this patron has pointed out, is the corporate shill side of him. So I've never seen anything from the man outside of the corporate representation he puts forward. So it's impossible for any of us to really be able to judge his character on a particularly deep level. Although I'd say that's correct to some point. Like, you always hear everyone all over the gaming industry praising Nintendo, praising Shigeru Miyamoto for all of which they have contributed to the world of gaming. And I suppose they don't overly reciprocate that on the same level in any detail. But on the same hand, you could say, has anyone really contributed as much to gaming? Well, I say contributed, has anyone really been as successful in the world of gaming as Nintendo? Because I would argue no one's as successful as Nintendo. And the reason why I would say that is because no company has been around and performed on a consistent level for that duration of time. They started doing well in the 80s, and they are still performing well to some degree in 2017. No other company has done that. And all the other companies who are around today, selling games and products, they're in other lines as well, so they've got money coming in from other sources other than gaming. Nintendo have been solely gaming, whereas as we know, Microsoft, they've been in the PC business and all sorts, and then you've got Sony, who've literally dabbled in everything: televisions, cameras, telephones. I own a Sony mobile phone, so yes, they are very successful, and they don't reciprocate very often. I do recall, I think it was Shigeru Miyamoto who praised the game Nights into Dreams on the Sega Saturn. I heard, whether it's true or not, but that game was a game he thought was so impressive he wished he had thought of the design himself. So occasionally he will reciprocate praise, but it seems to be very rare. In terms of would I interview Shigeru Miyamoto? I would obviously love to, but I know he would not be honest with me. He would just be a shill. Like the majority of YouTubers, you get to be honest, most people aren't honest. They're just full of lies. So I'm not going to get the true answers I would want from the man. That's why he will only go on channels, for example, stuff like, let's try and think of channels he's been on, The Completionist, Pro Jared, stuff like that. I think Shigeru Miyamoto's made appearances on channels like that, and that's because he's obviously Nintendo have cut deals with them in the past, and they've only willing to be represented in a positive light, which is fair enough. The cards are in their hand, so they can choose how they want to conduct themselves. So obviously I do not think someone like Shigeru Miyamoto would be comfortable with the sort of questions I would want answered, because essentially I would want something new. I wouldn't want to contribute to that continual boring YouTube echo chamber we get, where we get exactly the same opinions, thoughts, quotes, everything just repeated time and time again. So that's the reason it'd be a complete waste of time if I interviewed Shigeru Miyamoto, because I know he would not bring anything new to the table. He would just refuse. Corporate people for you, yes. Next question, Matthew Porter, potentially a hospital porter. What was your favourite LCD handheld games? I think my favourite is Tiger's Mega Man 2, but I have fond memories of the Konami Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like the shape and the cover art. Have to say, Matthew, although I love my retro gaming, not a big fan of LCD handheld games. I personally think they are cheap crap, which is on the whole pretty badly made. But I would be willing to try some of them, but the issue is half the bloody LCD games these days, despite being complete crap, are worth a ridiculous amount of money. Like Game & Watches, they're absolute rubbish, aren't they? But idiots are willing to pay loads for them. That's another thing, I've said it time and time again, what's with all these morons willing to pay out huge amounts of money for bad games? Game & Watches are a perfect example of that, I think. This is all my own humble opinion. But I suppose if I am going to credit one LCD game, as I said, not a fan of the genre, but ironically, my favourite one I have played is a Game & Watch device. I really quite like the Legend of Zelda one, the one where I think you just fight like moblins on the bottom screen, and then you go up to a top screen and you do something else, potentially fight Ganon, can't remember, but I found that one quite stimulating, the Legend of Zelda Game & Watch, so try it if you ever get a chance. Just make sure you never actually pay the money it's worth, because like I said, only idiots buy that sort of thing, although if it's for you, then fair enough. So yes, don't be too offended at home. If you like collecting crap, collect crap. Own decisions, just not for me. Next question from Anthony Darcy. What is one either really rare or expensive game you currently don't own that you would like to add to your collection in the future? I've done a pretty good job over the years of getting the expensive games I like, so there's nothing I'm desperate for in terms of really pricey games. If I could have any at the moment, I'd say I'd probably pick the European version on the NES of Mr. Gimmick, complete in-box copy of that, because that is a good game. And as I said, if I'm going to pay out a large sum of money for an expensive game, I'd rather the game be good. And to me, it makes it just that little bit more special that the game wasn't released in the United States, either the region, obviously, where they actually liked the NES. So the fact that there's a ridiculously rare NES game what's available in Europe, but not available in the region where the NES is actually successful, that makes that quite an interesting collector's piece for me. So yes, I would go for Mr. Gimmick on the NES if I could have any rare expensive game at the moment. Final question. Is it the final question? Yes. From Raymond Larrabee, not to be confused with Raymond Luxury Yacht, pronounced Throat Wobbler Mangrove. I love your show. I'm not a retro gamer by choice, just not turned on by most of the current gen offerings. Who would be, to be fair? They're just bloody PCs these days, aren't they? But underpowered and turned on their side, like system updates, bloody microtransactions, installs. And they don't even put all the game data on a CD, do they? It's ridiculous. The standard has dropped so ridiculously low compared to what it used to be. Like we used to get the whole game when we bought it on a cartridge. But these days, again, we get sold down the river. We get given an inferior product. So yes, I understand. Are there any 3D platformers you'd recommend apart from the better known ones such as Sly Cooper, Ratchet and Clank, DK, Mario, etc. 3D platformers. Interesting. 3D platformers what are less obvious. Bomberman 64, not too bad. I really enjoyed that game at the time. Big fan. So whether it stands up today though, because I've not played it since the 90s, is another question. But yes, I really did like Bomberman 64. Trying to think if there's any other 3D platformers I could recommend, but I can't really think of any. So, we will finish this video here, and I'm going to ask my comment section now to do my work for me. Can you think of any great 3D platformers which are kind of on the obscure side and you wouldn't put automatically in the same bracket with Banjo-Kazooie, Mario 64, Crash Bandicoot, etc.? Because I can't think of any. So, let me know in the comment section which each and every one of you think. So don't forget to like, subscribe and comment. And if you want to be if you want to be added in my next Patreon Q&A, then why not get involved and visit my Patreon page and check out the many rewards in which I offer. Yeah! See you soon, ladies and gentlemen. Cheerio!